One spring, a king set up his tent in a beautiful meadow, surrounded by shady trees and a babbling brook. 3 sisters of marriageable age came from a nearby village to gather flowers and edible plants. At noon, they sat down by the crystal-clear stream, not far from the royal tent, and began to chat. The oldest sister said, "If the king were to marry me to his eldest son, I'd weave him a tent so large it could house his entire army, with half of it still empty." The second sister chimed in, "If the king married me to his second son, I'd weave a rug so big it could accommodate his entire court and all the people in his kingdom, with half of it still left over." The younger sister spoke up. "I won't brag, but if the king married me to his youngest son, and if it pleases heaven, I'd give birth to twins, a silver-haired boy and a golden-haired girl." The 2 older sisters laughed and mocked their younger sibling. Little did they know, the king had been listening to their conversation from behind a screen. Pleased with what he heard, he decided to marry all 3 sisters to his 3 sons. Sometime after the weddings, the king approached the older sister and asked, "Where is the tent you said you would weave?" She replied sheepishly, "Oh, that was just idle chatter among us sisters." He then asked the second sister, "And where is your enormous rug?" She answered, "It was merely empty talk, Your Majesty." Finally, he turned to the youngest sister and inquired, "What about your twins?" She responded confidently, "If it pleases heaven, I will bear them when the time comes." The older sisters grew intensely jealous of their younger sibling, as she seemed to have won the affection of the entire court. They vowed to seek revenge. One night, the youngest sister gave birth to the promised silver-haired boy and golden-haired girl. The envious sisters immediately took the babies away and placed them in a chest, which they threw into the river. They then put a pair of puppies by the young mother's bedside. The sisters rushed to inform the young prince that his beloved wife had given birth to 2 puppies. The prince was horrified, and the king was furious. He ordered his servants to wrap the young woman in a camel's hide and place her by the palace door, commanding that everyone entering the palace should spit in her face as punishment for bringing shame upon those who had loved and favoured her. Meanwhile, an old couple lived in a small hut on the outskirts of the city, near the river's edge. The old man fished daily, usually catching 2 fish, one for himself and one for his wife. On the day the babies were thrown into the river, the old man cast his net and pulled out a chest instead of fish. Curious, the couple took the chest home and opened it. To their amazement, they found 2 beautiful babies inside. The silver-haired boy had his thumb in the golden-haired girl's mouth, and vice versa. They were contentedly sucking each other's thumbs and not crying at all. The old couple was overjoyed. "Thank heaven!" they exclaimed. "We've never had children, and now we've been blessed with twins." As the old woman washed the babies, she noticed something extraordinary. Gold and silver fell from their hair. Excited, she said to her husband, "Quick, take this gold and silver to the market. Buy us a cow so we can feed the babies milk." The old man did as she asked, purchasing not only a cow, but many other necessities for the twins. They raised the children with great care and kindness in their humble home. The children grew quickly, becoming a source of comfort for the aging couple. The boy grew into a brave lad and became a skilled hunter, while the girl blossomed into a beautiful and intelligent young woman. Before the old couple passed away, the girl learned from her adoptive grandmother that they had been fished from the river in a chest. She also discovered that the despised woman at the king's palace door was their real mother, who had been put there because of the lies told by the king's 2 daughters-in-law. After their adoptive parents died, the siblings continued to live in the hut. The young man went hunting, while his sister often visited the court to see their mother. Following her late grandmother's advice, she kept her identity secret to avoid trouble. One day, the young hunter caught a magnificent antelope. "This is fit for a king," he thought, and took it to the palace. The king was delighted. Another day, the hunter killed a lion and presented its skin to the king, who said, "Well done, my young hunter. Come to the palace tomorrow. I want to praise you before my court." When the hunter told his sister about the invitation, she said, "That's wonderful. Take this bouquet with you. When you enter the palace, You'll see a woman wrapped in a camel hide, half buried in dust near the door. Everyone who enters spits in her face. Please, for my sake, throw this bunch of roses to her as you pass by." "Of course," the young man agreed. The next day, as he entered the palace, he tossed the bouquet to the disgraced woman. Inside, both the king and his courtiers were impressed by the young hunter's manly bearing and intelligent conversation. However, the king's two daughters-in-law were displeased by his kind gesture toward their disgraced sister. Suspicious of the young hunter's actions, the two sisters-in-law whispered to each other, "We must find a way to get rid of this boy before our secret is revealed." Using their influence with the king, they approached him and said, "Your Majesty, this young hunter is clearly skilled. He's brought you a lion's skin. But one isn't enough. Send him to bring a dozen more to decorate the new palace." The king liked this idea and summoned the young hunter. "Bring me a dozen lions' skins to adorn the new palace," he commanded. When the young man returned home and told his sister about the task, she said, "Brother, our late godmother once told me we have an aunt living in the Black Mountains. She said if we ever faced a difficult task from the court, we should seek her help. You should go to her. She'll show you how to hunt 12 lions." Following his sister's advice, the young hunter set out for the Black Mountains. In a deep cavern, he found an old fairy woman. He ran to her and kissed her hand respectfully. "Well, well," exclaimed the old fairy. "Is it you, my silver-haired nephew?" "Yes, Auntie, it's me," the young man replied. "And how is your golden-haired sister?" the fairy asked. "She sends her love and respect, Auntie," he answered. "What brings you here, my boy?" she inquired. "The king demands 12 lions' skins from me," he explained. "Come, hide under my apron until your 40 cousins arrive," she said, concealing him in her skirts. Soon, 40 fairy brothers arrived home. Smelling the young man, they exclaimed, "Mother, have you prepared human meat for us today?" "No, sons," she replied, "unless you're cruel enough to eat your own human cousin." "Where is he, Mother?" they asked eagerly. "We won't hurt him. We just want to talk." The young hunter emerged from his hiding place. His fairy cousins were delighted to meet him and took turns embracing him. When they heard about his task, they said, "That's easy, cousin. We'll give you 12 lions' skins we've been using as quilts. We'll replace them with new ones tomorrow." They gave him the skins to take to the king, along with a magical tent as a gift for his golden-haired sister. The young man returned home, gave the tent to his sister, and presented the skins to the king, who was very pleased. However, the two sisters-in-law grew even more uneasy. They approached the king again, saying, "Your Majesty, we need 7 pairs of elephant tusks to decorate the new palace with ivory. Send the young hunter to fetch them." The king, unaware of their malicious intentions, agreed and sent the young man on this new quest. Once again, he sought help from his fairy cousins, who said, "Cousin, we can get you 7 pairs of elephant tusks, but you must bring us a saw and 7 horse loads of 7-year-old wine." The young hunter returned to the city, gathered the requested items, and brought them to his cousins. They emptied the elephant's watering hole and filled it with wine. That night, when the elephants came to drink, they became drunk and fell unconscious. The fairies then sawed off their tusks and gave them to their cousin. Along with the tusks, the fairies gave the young man a magical rug as a gift for his sister. He returned home, presented the rug to his sister, and delivered the ivory to the king, who was once again impressed. The king's 2 daughters-in-law, now furious at the young hunter's continued success, approached the king with another request. "Your Majesty," they said, "the new palace is beautifully decorated with lions' skins and ivory, but it lacks one thing, a beautiful mistress to live in it. The daughter of the King of India would be perfect. She's the most beautiful woman in the world and would make an ideal wife for your youngest son. Send the young hunter to bring her here." The king agreed and sent the young man on this new mission. Once more he turned to his fairy cousins for help. They managed to kidnap the Indian princess and bring her safely to the young hunter. They also gave him a magical self-serving table as a gift. The young man fell in love with the princess at first sight, and she with him. However, bound by his promise, he brought her to the king. The king ordered him to take the princess to the new palace and invited the young hunter to a private banquet at the royal palace as a reward for his remarkable deeds. When the young man told his sister about the invitation, she warned him, "Brother, when you go to the palace tomorrow, take your hound with you. Let it walk ahead of you, and only step where it has stepped. When you eat, first give some food to your dog. If it doesn't harm him, then you can eat. But if the dog dies, don't touch the food, or you'll die too." The next day, the young hunter followed his sister's advice. His dog walked ahead, revealing a deep pit hidden under the palace threshold. Inside, he tossed the bouquet his sister had given him to the woman in the dust. At the banquet, he fed a piece of food to his dog, which immediately died. The young man politely declined to eat, saying he wasn't hungry. Despite the sisters-in-law's attempts to persuade him, he didn't touch the food. Instead, he invited the king and his entire court to dine at his humble home the next day. The king, now fascinated by the young man, accepted the invitation. That evening, the hunter told his sister what had happened. She explained that the pit and the poisoned food were traps set by the king's two daughters-in-law to kill him. She also revealed that the woman in the dust was their mother. The siblings then prepared for the king's visit. They set up the magical tent from the fairies, which was large enough to accommodate an entire kingdom. They laid out the magical rug, which matched the tent's size. In the center, they placed a self-serving table, which could produce any desired food in any quantity. The next day, the king and his court arrived. Seeing the enormous tent, the king thought to himself, "This must be the tent my oldest daughter-in-law boasted about weaving." When he saw the rug, he mused, "This must be the rug my second daughter-in-law claimed she would make." The entire army was entertained, with room to spare. The king was deep in thought, suspecting there was more to the story than he knew. Impressed by the feast and the magical items, the king addressed the twins at the end of the banquet. "Ask me for anything you desire, and I'll grant it even half my kingdom." The twins replied in unison, "Is there anything more precious than one's parents? Mighty king, give us our father and mother." Confused, the king said, "Though I'm a king, I'm still human. How can I give you your lost parents?" The twins responded, "How is it that you believe a human can give birth to dogs, but not that a human can restore lost parents? If one is true, the other must be too." These words terrified the king's two daughters-in-law more than a bolt of lightning would have. "What do you mean?" the king asked, his voice trembling. The twins recounted their story. At the end, the young man removed his cap, revealing his silver hair, while his sister let down her golden locks. Overcome with emotion, the king embraced his grandchildren, weeping with joy. They then embraced the prince, their father, and their wronged mother, who was immediately released from her punishment. The king ordered the two wicked women to be thrown into a furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual. A grand 40-day wedding celebration followed, with the young man marrying the Indian princess he had brought to the palace. Thus, heaven rewarded the good and punished the evil. The twins were reunited with their parents. The truth was revealed, and justice was served. The kingdom rejoiced in the happy ending, and the family lived in peace and prosperity for many years to come.